Bible College students back with this class in Angelology, Fallen Angels, and Demonology. This is lecture number 11. We've been studying about some of the fallen angels and what they did, and Lucifer, and how he rebelled, tried to corrupt the entire world, and his fallen condition. And then 1/3 of the angels followed him. And I think last session we were talking about how the fallen angels. Now this information comes from the book of Enoch, the book of Jubilees. I believe Jasher might have some in it. These are what we call ancient books that were not canonized, and but you still have biblical references made to what these angels did, and particularly in Genesis chapter 6, and you can, the first 4 verses there, you can read about it. But Enoch, the book of Enoch, which I believe was the very first book ever written, gives indication about what these fallen angels had done. And Enoch talks about the fact that 200 of these angels, and I believe they were sent down to the earth by Satan himself to corrupt the bloodline of Seth and Adam, to bring forth this Redeemer in Genesis 3:15 that had been promised by God. And I believe that Satan sent these angels down to corrupt humanity, and not only humanity, but all the plants, animals, everything he could corrupt. He was evil, and he corrupted the women with the union between angels and the daughters of men. Many believe that these were some of the daughters of Cain, the women that were born from Cain when he went out to the land of Nod and built a city. There became Sethites and Cainites, and there were women. Now the women from the Seth side, I don't believe they really got corrupted, but the ones on the Cain side certainly got corrupted. And out of this came the Nephthalims. It says in the book of Enoch and also in Jubilees that the union between the fleshly women and the spiritual angels that had transformed themselves into humans was a perverted, demonic race of beings called giants and Nephthalims. And Atticans, these were different types of giants, and so we'll spend a little bit of time talking about them in the Catabole, and also how God had the good angels. Now, in the book of in the Bible, you'll only see 3 angels mentioned: Gabriel, Michael, and Lucifer. Lucifer was the fallen one. Then you see Michael, who is a warring angel. He's also the angel for Israel. But there's also Gabriel, who is the messenger angel, and he also works on behalf of God. Angel itself is messenger. But there are also some other angels that are mentioned of what they do. Uriel is one. Raphael is another. I can't remember. There are a couple of them, but there's about 6 or 8 that are the chieftain archangels or angels. And I've, in my bibliography, I have put down where you can find these books of Enoch and Jubilees and some of these. You can get them from the bookstore out of San Diego for ancient books, or you can get them online now from Amazon. Dr. Johnson has his, but to get Dr. Charles, R.H. Charles's books, which is that's one I'd suggest you get. Then you can get that from that bookstore out of San Diego. It's in the bibliography of this course. Let's get back to this course now, and let's continue talking a little bit about these angels. There were even rabbis, according to the Talmud, who invoked these sedition and rituals for the purpose of exorcism. Azel began teaching his clan how to make weapons of war, particularly swords and shields from metal. And he taught them, he was teaching the people how of these different metals and materials and how to do things. That just shows you these angels were given incredible intelligence. They had secrets of the universe. They knew so much about what was going on. Now, I'm always amazed at watching the movies or watching the documentary on ancient aliens on the TV History Channel. And the only reason I watch that is I want to see what human people think about what happens and these things that happen that aren't explainable. And they call them aliens from other planets, and there's other civilizations on other planets. I think what they were and are is the sightings and things that they're seeing are these fallen angels. I believe these fallen angels have a lot to do with of being some of the things that we're seeing unexplained, UFOs and things. I believe those come from, I think they're all fallen angels. And I think it may have had to do with the giants in the pre-Adamite earth, or the giants, or these angels in the time of Noah and them that were roaming the earth, and the giants that were there. And they built some of these enormous structures that I wonder how in the world could they ever built those. Of course, the human side of it and the man side that's not spiritual says, well, these aliens came down from these other planets and they did all that. Well, I believe it was the fallen angels that did a lot of it, and I believe that the giants that were in the earth at that time contributed to a lot of it too. And it says also he taught them jewelry making from earth materials, precious stones, in addition to teaching women to use makeup. But the other thing they taught them how to do was to make potions to create abortions. So they said that these angels taught these women how to make these potions. They drink it, they would have an abortion, so that their figures would stay pristine, and that their looks would stay very beautiful, and they wouldn't change because they had several children. Simsa and others taught many other forbidden and twisted things to their wives. Notice, not wife, wives. They taught sorcery, enchantments, the cutting of roots for poisons and their antidotes, potions, and astrology and astronomy, and an intricate religion that set up themselves and their sons to be worshipped in the place of God. I think you get an indication of that in Paul's letter to the Romans in chapter 1, starting at about verse 21 and going down to 31, that you see this society that was there in the pre-flood time of Noah. And they had an intricate religion. Well, this religion was totally idolatry and humanism. One legend states that it was Simsa who married Naamah, as I said, the daughter of Lamesh. With such perversion in the land, maybe she and was the wife of both Arizel and Simsa both. According to Enoch, the main center of the Nephilim seems to have been at Ardis, the summit of Mount Hermon. In other words, these giants came down from Mount Hermon. And these giants began to roam all over the world. And I'll tell you a little bit about these giants. There are quite a few digs that go on around the world. And if you go to prophecywatchers.com and Gary Stearman, who is the head of the Prophecy Watchers, I believe that's the one. There's Prophecy Watchers, and then there's Prophecy in the News by Linda Church. That's Dr. J.R. Church's wife, who has that one, that program. And but in the Prophecy Watchers, Gary Stearman has on 2 or 3 people that study these giants and what they did in these digs that are going on around the world. And they talk about the size of these giants and these skeletons that have been found. Not in the United States much, but in other countries, because in the United States, if a giant skeleton is found, then they believe they have to notify the authorities locally first, and then it goes to a university, and then it goes to the Smithsonian, and the Smithsonian will send a team out. What they do is they'll immediately start the digs. They won't let anybody come in and watch the digs. They take all the bones and take them back to Washington and hide them out, because these giants go against the theory of evolution. And the Smithsonian Institution, I believe, promotes evolution. And so that man didn't evolve up, but man evolved down from Adam. I think Adam was probably 7 foot tall, big, huge, strong person. Eve, maybe 6 foot, beautiful. God created the most beautiful woman ever. But over time, man evolved down. Not a man bobbing up out of a tadpole. A man was created in the image of God and made by God, and these he was probably a very he had the mind of God, and Adam used all of his brain. We only used about 20% of our brain now, and so these giants propose a problem for evolutionists. I know that in 1919 there was a 19 foot 6 inch giant found up on the Brazos River in Seymour, Texas, and the Dallas newspaper came out and did an article on it. And you could go into the archives in 1919 and look under, I think it was the Dallas Times Tribune or something, that wrote a front page article on a giant that was found. There are a lot of giant digs and things that have been done up in the South Dakota and North Dakota area, these mounds that they have up there. And like I said, the Smithsonian keeps that all hidden out from the American people. But in the foreign countries, like Peru, they found a 30-foot giant down there in Peru. They're just some huge digs that go on. And a guy named Nazarelli, who is a good friend of Gary Stearman's, he's the chief investigator, and he talks and does DVDs and videos on these giants. I have one by Gary Stearman, and I didn't realize that in the Bible it mentions 5 different classifications of giants. And the Nephilim, the Rephidim giants, I think the Rephidim giants was the one that Goliath was a Rephidim giant out of Philistine, and he was a hybrid breed between the fallen angels and the Philistia people. and he had 4 other brothers. And then there was the giant at Bashan. Og of Bashan was also a Rephidim giant, I believe. But David killed Goliath. And then if you read in I believe 1 Samuel, about 18, David's mighty men went out and killed the other 4 brothers of Goliath. Now, in the Bible, that just pretty much does away with the giants in the land of Canaan that we know about. There might have been still some others there, but none of them are ever mentioned in the Scripture. Let's look here too, continuing on. And the angels began to experiment with crossbreeding of plants. They wanted to manipulate the DNA of God's creation. That's why in Genesis, God said that each animal would produce after its own kind. Well, when they started manipulating the DNA, they tried to manipulate where it didn't produce after its own kind, that it created another type creation. And God hated all this stuff. The angels did not stop simply by having children and trying to create empires. They began experimenting with crossbreeding of plants and animals. The book of Jasher states that those who did not want to become pregnant, there was a well-known drug that caused spontaneous abortions, and in time, sterility. As we see the ancient book of Jasher in chapter 2, 19 through 22, there was apparently also a drug used to stop spontaneous abortions for those that wanted to keep their babies. Let me tell you, these angels were smart. They were given supernatural wisdom. In fact, it says in the Bible, I think in 2 Corinthians, about the wisdom of these angels. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's a little known fragment on Enoch called the Book of the Giants. This work describes exactly how the angels began to crossbreed insects, animals, and humans. And you remember, on the ark, Noah was told to bring the animals on 2 by 2 of the same kind. And so they could preserve the race of creatures that God had put on. And God did that for a reason. Now, easily, God could have just had them all killed in the flood and started all over after the flood. He could just recreated them all. But he told Noah, he says, we're going to bring some of the pre-flood animals over to post-flood. And that's what they did. These were animals that these fallen angels had not corrupted yet. The work describes exactly how these angels began to manipulate and ruin God's own creation. They began to taking 200 sets of creatures with slightly different chromosomal counts, like sheep and goat, and crossbred them. Now, how did they know the genetics? I mean, they had to know genetics to do this. I took genetics in college, and genetics was not an easy course when you start dealing in chromosomes and you take a black sheep and a white sheep, and then you count the chances of getting a white sheep, a black sheep, and then speckled and spotted. See, and it usually you have 4 that come out. You'll get a white one, a black one, and 2 speckled and spotted out of the 4. Later, they crossbred sets of new unstable life forms to create further modifications, then repeat to get the desired effect. In Genesis 1, God said, after its own kind 10 times, because it was in violation of God's law to try to create something that wasn't after its own kind. And that's why I think that these scientists are in violation of God's laws and in jeopardy of sin and judgment for those that are in there trying to create test tube babies and crossbreeds and things that are not according to God's law. The mixing of the kinds was complete rebellion against God's laws of reproduction. And I'm thankful, I believe President George Bush is the one that signed executive order or got Congress to say that they couldn't create test tube babies and all those things back in his administration. let's look at the results of all this. To crush the second rebellion, God sent Azrael and held him responsible for all the wickedness and chained him under the valley of Benet Heodu. And I know that there is a special abode in hell called Tartarus, where all these fallen angels are, these 200, and there might be even more that got into the sin, that are bound and chained to this very day, waiting for judgment. God then commanded the holy angels to cause a civil war between the Nephilim clans. And these were the clans between the Cainites and Sethites, I believe. And after the Nephilim were completely annihilated, in other words, these giants killed themselves. Simsa and those who fell with him were chained in Tartarus, a special place in hell. Now, even Peter, in 2 Peter chapter 3, talks about that God did not even spare the angels, but threw them into hell. That word, when you look at hell, is not Sheol, it's Tartarus. The disembodied spirits of the Nephilim were allowed to roam the earth and became known as demons. Now, I believe that that's one part of the demons, but that's not the only place that the demons came from. And we'll look at 3 or 4 different theories of where these demons come from. In Revelation 9:14 informs us that there are 4 mighty angels that are chained under the Euphrates River. We do not know the story of these angels, but most likely they are part of the second rebellion. It may also mean that when they are released, they will again create hybrid creatures. Now, when we start talking about these demons, I believe that I know in Dr. Pittman's book and Dr. Kenneth Hagin's book and some other Dr. Finus Dake's Bible and book, there are it talks about the origin of demons and where they came from, and there are three or four different theories on where demons came from. And one of the theories is that these demons are the disembodied spirits of these Nephilim giants that were there. Now I want to start talking a little bit. We don't have too much more time, but I want to mention a little bit about the chaotic earth and its effects today. And when I'm talking about the chaotic earth, we're going to be talking about Genesis chapter 1:1 and Genesis chapter 1:2. It is called the chaotic earth in Genesis 2. So I'm going to go through this part of it, and then next session we'll talk about what we call the Katabaleh, and I'll explain what that is. Let's just go to Isaiah 45, verse 18, and let's look at the Bible. It says that the earth, in the original earth, was created perfect, and it was good. In other words, I don't believe God ever created anything that wasn't perfect. He created everything perfect. So in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then the next verse in Genesis 2, he talks about that the earth was a formless void, and it was, and the word there was chaotic. Now, that word, what happened there between Genesis verse 1 and Genesis verse 2 in the Hebrew is tohu vabohu. It became waste and empty, waste and desolate and void. Well, I don't believe that God created it that way in the original condition. I believe He created it perfect. But something catastrophic happened between verse 1 and verse 2. And of course the Jews call it Tohu Va-Bohu. It's T-O-H-U-V-A-B-O-H-U. And that is waste and empty, void, or desolate. Now in Genesis 1 verse 28 and 29, we see that Adam and Eve are told to replenish the earth. What happened? Something happened that had destroyed the earth, and then when God set Adam and Eve in the garden, He told them to replenish the earth. And to replenish the earth was not to just fill it, but to replenish it. And you can't replenish something that hadn't already been plenished. So they were told to do that. And if we went to Jeremiah chapter 4, 23 through 26, we see a social order as we would read through there. And that social order was cast down. Jeremiah saw a vision. It's kind of he's going along, and then all of a sudden he sees a vision of this. And this vision he saw was this social order that was on the earth has been now cast down. And that is called the Katabole. K-A-T-A-B-O-L-E. Katabole. The casting down of the first world social order. And then we looked in Ezekiel 28, the anointed cherub that covereth. We talked about that in some other sessions, and that's when Lucifer fell. Satan and a host of angelic beings were in charge of the original earth, I believe. He was the anointed cherub that covereth. And then in Isaiah 14, we talked about his 5 I wills in his rebellion. The rebellion of the angelic host, the 1/3 of the angels in Revelation 12:4, these were excluded from heaven and took up their abode in the heavenlies. Satan is the prince of the power of the air in Ephesians 2:2, or the Jews called him Beelzebub. These fallen angels became the angelic beings of Ephesians 6:12 through 18. I believe the principalities and powers or dominions. And then rulers of darkness, spiritual wickedness in high places. There's a difference, I believe, in fallen angels and demons. And the reason is fallen angels already have a spiritual celestial body. Demons are disembodied spirits that are looking for a body to inhabit to give them some authority in the earth. So I believe right there is something that you want to think about. Paul says this was warfare that went on in heaven. And we see this warfare all the time in the earth. So today I'm going to stop here, and we'll continue on with the Katabole in the next session. So I want to thank you for taking this course. May God bless you, and get you some reference books. If you can get the book of Enoch, the book of Jasher, the book of Jubilees, it'd be good to have in your library, as well as reading the Bible. Now, as I said, these are theories. A lot of them, these books are not canonized, but they're good history books. And the Jewish people use the book of Enoch as a history book, and Jasher also. So thank you, and